On this Saturday night, a salute to Prince Philip. The future king mourns his father.
My dear papa was a very special person.
So much so, the Duke dictated his own funeral plans. The ICU crisis during the pandemic, with cases rising.
Ontario has about 2,300 ICU beds. In practice, though, we have far fewer because we simply cannot staff them.
Banking on Mark Carney, the Liberals' new star player, plus the rise and fall of Matt Gaetz, now under investigation for alleged sex trafficking.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Today, guns rang out across the United Kingdom and throughout parts of the Commonwealth in honor of Prince Philip. Good evening and thank you for joining us. Buckingham Palace has complied with Prince Philip's wishes for a low-key funeral. It will take place next Saturday, April 17th, on the grounds of Windsor Castle. It'll still be steeped in royal tradition, but only a few will attend. The Queen, his wife of 73 years, and a small group of mourners. Today, Prince Charles, the future King of England, spoke publicly about his father's passing. Here's our Europe Bureau Chief, Crystal Goomansingh.
A wave of mourners descending upon Windsor Castle. Some grew up with the Duke of Edinburgh and regard him as a national figure. Regardless of age, the loss is understood. Did she ask to come?
Yes, yeah.
I wanted to show Prince Philip my respect.
My dear papa was a very special person who, I think above all else, would have been amazed by the reaction and the touching things that have been said about him.
A small funeral service attended by the Queen and members of the royal family will be held at St. George's Chapel on April 17th. A specially built Land Rover, which Prince Philip had a hand in designing, will carry his coffin to the chapel. His death, while not unexpected given his advanced age, still shook people. When news broke Friday, Shamross Clark was drawn to the castle. She stood there for a long time, quietly watching.
I don't know what to say because it's a very, very sad day for everyone. And I just want to be here because it is a big thing.
While the world has lost a veteran of the Second World War, a champion of the environment and supporter of young people, the Queen has lost her partner of 73 years. Their youngest son, Prince Edward, and his wife Sophie visited Her Majesty Saturday morning.
As you can imagine, my family and I miss my father enormously. He was a much-loved and appreciated figure.
Crystal, what do we know about who will be attending next week's funeral service?
Well, we do know that Prince Harry will be attending the service for his grandfather next week. Of course, that is a huge issue because so much has been made about the fractures in the royal family. Prince Harry and Meghan, of course, stepping away from active royal life and moving to the United States. Then that bombshell interview with Oprah with allegations of racism. So he will be in attendance. We are also hearing that British Prime Minister Boris Johnson will not be attending the service. And of course, members of the public, they will not have any sort of access. However, it will be televised.
It's such a complicated time in the world. How are COVID-19 restrictions changing what would normally be a very public affair?
Yeah, that's a really important part of all of this. We are still under some restrictions. By Monday, they will be eased, but gatherings are limited, only 30 people. And that is really why we're seeing officials such as Boris Johnson not attending, just to keep it small, to keep it within that 30 people limit under the restrictions. And also at the service inside St. George's Chapel, all of those in attendance will have to be wearing masks.
Crystal Goomansingh outside Windsor Castle tonight. Thanks, Crystal. Turning now to the pandemic, those COVID-19 variants of concern are causing chaos right across Canada. In the last 2 weeks, those cases that are confirmed to be the variants of concern almost quadrupled to nearly 25,000. In Ontario, health officials say ICU capacity is being stretched to its limit. And as Katherine Ward explains, doctors and nurses say their biggest battle right now isn't the virus.
It is an atmosphere of stress.
Stress is in the air in ICU.
Birgit Umagba says when she goes into work, it is a guessing game about how many people will be there.
We never know how many nurses or even respiratory therapists or even clerks we're going to be having on any given shift.
In Ontario, ICUs continue to fill up. On Friday, Critical Care Services Ontario reported out of the 1,846 ICU patients, 572 were COVID-19 related illnesses. 77 had been admitted within a 24-hour period.
Ontario has about 2,300 ICU beds. In practice, though, we have far fewer because we simply cannot staff them.
Nurses may be sick, they may have family members or children who are sick, and when that happens, they can't come to work for 2 weeks.
The province took new measures to address the staffing challenge, implementing emergency orders to allow for the redeployment of healthcare workers to hospitals. But it's not necessarily a straightforward process to bring in people to work in an ICU. Experts say it's a job that requires additional training and specialized skills.
It's hard on people to parachute people into units. We want there to be it on a volunteer basis to start with. At the same time, we have to accept that they need training and support in the units that they're going into.
That learning curve is very steep. And again, these nurses that are specially trained are being stretched thin as is.
Birgit says getting additional support will help, but the stress is still there.
Of course, any help right now is help. But again, we're putting Band-Aids on problems that are duplicating by the minute.
Katherine Ward, Global News, Toronto.
Parts of northwestern New Brunswick, which includes the Edmundston area, are heading into lockdown. As of midnight, residents must stay within their single household bubble. Unnecessary travel in and out of the region isn't allowed, and schools will revert to online learning only. The province's public health officer has confirmed the presence of the more contagious variants of COVID-19, and there may have been community transmission. The Men's World Curling Championship, which began on Thursday in Calgary, has been suspended because of COVID-19 cases. Canada was eliminated on Friday after losing to Scotland. Shortly after the game, the World Curling Federation announced some players of teams that didn't qualify for the playoffs tested positive for COVID-19. But they didn't have symptoms. Not taking any chances, the playoff teams are being tested. Curling Canada says it is looking at rescheduling options, but only if the athletes and officials can be kept safe under current protocols. Teams are confined to the arena and their hotel. We have dueling political conventions this weekend. Both the federal Liberals and the federal New Democrats are meeting, virtually of course. They've been debating policy and strategy ahead of an election. Our chief political correspondent David Akin has been keeping an eye on both. David, let's focus on the Liberals. What stood out for you?
Well, there was lots of talk about election readiness and fundraising, but there was also some hints about what might be in the budget on April the 19th. Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland kicked off the convention by signaling promised action on childcare. On Saturday, the Liberal grassroots voted for universal basic income, national pharmacare, and more money for seniors, though none of those votes are binding on Justin Trudeau's government. But some of Trudeau's ministers did drop some hints about their budget priorities, such as helping the aviation sector. That could mean aid for airlines like WestJet and Air Canada. Trudeau himself was mum on the budget. Instead, he used his convention speech to take a shot at his Conservative rival.
The problem for Erin O'Toole is that he's not interested in real solutions to real problems.
Trudeau also has a new and potentially significant partisan ally, former Bank of Canada Governor Mark Carney, who had his political coming out at the convention on Friday night.
I'll do whatever I can to support the Liberal Party in our efforts to build a better future for Canadians.
Carney stopped short of saying he would run for the Liberals, while Conservatives and New Democrats poured water on Carney's coming out, basically branding him as an out-of-touch elite who is a favorite of the billionaires. The irony for the Conservatives, it was Stephen Harper who appointed Mark Carney to be governor of the Bank of Canada, and Harper and Carney worked in lockstep to get Canada through its last economic crisis back in 2009. Robin?
David Akin in Ottawa. Thanks, David. Today, New Democrats reconvened for day 2 of that party's 3-day national convention. It will feature a keynote speech from NDP leader Goomansingh tomorrow. The budget is just over a week away, and it'll be the first real look at the state of our economy in 2 years. Our Ottawa Bureau Chief Mercedes Stephenson spoke with former Prime Minister Jean Chrétien about his experience balancing budgets, what advice he has for Justin Trudeau's government. Here's his diplomatic answer.
Public life is difficult, and all the premiers and the Prime Minister are doing their best. I would disagree with some of the things they do, but I'm not there, and I don't want to be the Monday morning quarterback.
What are some of the things you would disagree with?
If they ask me, I will tell them, but not through TV.
And you can see the full interview with Chrétien tomorrow on the West Block with Mercedes Stephenson right here on Global. Now to a Global News exclusive. A BC man charged with second-degree murder and attempted murder in a high-profile homicide has been acquitted. A BC Supreme Court justice ruled investigators with the province's Special Homicide Unit disregarded Canadian law when dealing with key pieces of evidence. As Jordan Armstrong reports, now there are questions about whether other criminal cases will get their day in court.
Samandeep Gill is a free man. After almost 3 years behind bars awaiting trial, the accused has been acquitted on charges of second-degree murder and attempted murder.
I can say without exaggeration, I have never seen anything like this before.
Back in April 2011, just hours after they were married, Manbir Kajla and his wife were involved in a fender bender in Surrey, BC. When Kajla got out of the vehicle and approached the other car, he was shot by a suspect who then left the scene. Gill was charged in 2018, but the murder case crumbled after key Crown evidence was thrown out last month. Alleged audio of the shooting captured on a cell phone seized by the RCMP's Integrated Homicide Investigation Team, or IHIT, from Gill's home, deemed inadmissible.
Basically flouting the law, of deliberately disregarding the law in what appears to be almost all of their cases across the board for a matter of years.
At issue is compliance with Section 490, the law that police must seek extension orders to hold evidence beyond 90 days. In court, it was revealed that IHIT was warned as early as 2007 by Crown and a Justice of the Peace not to ignore that section. In acquitting Gill, the judge found the blanket noncompliance policy continued beyond 2014, when IHIT supposedly dumped the directive. The IHIT policy of noncompliance amounts to systemic, flagrant disregard for charter-protected rights, said the judge. I find that IHIT was, at best, willfully blind towards the charter implications of the policy. The fact that the police in this case sought and received legal advice that explicitly deemed compliance mandatory makes these actions more egregious. We reached out to all levels of the RCMP, including national headquarters in Ottawa, to request an interview, but we did not get one in time for this story. In an email, the acting boss of the homicide team said, "I can confirm that IHIT has since taken steps to ensure our investigative standards and actions align with and are compliant with Section 490. She adds they're talking with BC's prosecution service on how to move forward.
These are not guidelines. This is the law.
Vancouver lawyer Ravi Hira can't speak about the specifics of this case, but he says newly uncovered information could be a tool for the defense in homicide convictions still under appeal.
If an agency deliberately elects, not to engage in that which is required by the law, in my opinion, that investigative agency is playing Russian roulette with evidence.
Jordan Armstrong, Global News, Vancouver.
Coming up, the Florida lawmaker accused of sex trafficking involving a minor. Republican Representative Matt Gaetz is the focus of two investigations, one by the FBI, another by the House Ethics Committee. Gaetz is accused of sex trafficking involving a teenager. A staunch supporter of Donald Trump, he denies the allegations. But tonight the calls for his resignation are growing. Jennifer Johnson reports.
Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz with his fiancée making his first public appearance since the House Ethics Committee began an investigation into whether he violated sex trafficking laws.
The smears against me range from distortions of my personal life to wild, and I mean wild, conspiracy theories. I won't be intimidated by a lying media.
Gaetz taking a page from his close ally, former President Donald Trump's playbook. But it was Trump's Department of Justice that started the investigation of Gaetz and his alleged sexual relationship with a 17-year-old girl.
Categorical denials are all about a political career right now. Prosecutors don't pay a lot of attention to that.
New allegations claim Gaetz sent money to an accused sex trafficker, Joel Greenberg, who then gave it to 3 young women in 2018. Greenberg is expected to plead guilty to federal crimes as part of an undisclosed deal.
I'm sure Matt Gaetz is not feeling very comfortable today.
The House committee is looking into a variety of violations, including that Gaetz allegedly shared inappropriate images or videos while in House chambers.
If, in fact, these allegations are true, of course, being removed from the Judiciary Committee is the least that could be done.
Gaetz, a once rising star among conservatives, denies all the allegations against him. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
Still ahead, Brazil's climbing death toll from COVID-19, and still the president downplays the virus.
You're watching Global National.
For the first time in this pandemic, Brazil's daily death toll surpassed 4,000 people. The country's president has long downplayed the risks of the virus, encouraging regions to avoid lockdown. But this is where the P1 variant was first detected, the one that's more contagious and has the potential to lower the effectiveness of some vaccines. Here's Mike Drolet.
In Sao Paulo, Brazil, a ghoulish scene is playing out for the world to see. Workers exhuming bodies from old graveyards to make room for more. With no end to the misery in sight, Brazilians have now put their faith in the COVID-19 vaccines, which the government was late in ordering and are in short supply. It gives us hope that there are better days ahead, says this community leader. The numbers tell a different story. More than 345,000 Brazilians have died from COVID-19, second only to the United States. However, Brazil surpassed 4,000 deaths in one day this past week, and experts now predict it will surpass the U.S. in total deaths by July. Even as health officials raise alarms about the dangers of the more transmissible P1 variant, which has also appeared in Canada, little is being done to slow its spread. It's a pity we've become an embarrassment to the world, says this union leader. Brazil is a time bomb and breeding ground for the coronavirus. Much of the blame is being heaped on President Jair Bolsonaro, an ally of former U.S. President Donald Trump. Bolsonaro has refused to take the vaccine, openly derided lockdowns and masks, and told Brazilians to stop whining about the virus. This virus, like others, is here to stay and will remain for a lifetime, he said. It is practically impossible to eradicate. What are we going to do until then? Medicine and supplies to treat COVID-19 are running dangerously low. If the healthcare system collapses, as doctors in overwhelmed hospitals warn is possible, they may not be able to do much. Mike Drolet, Global News, Toronto.
Up next, the lessons teachers need to help racialize students. In the past year, remote learning has blurred the line between classrooms and living rooms. It's given parents new insight into what their kids are learning and what lessons are lacking. In Toronto, a group of Black fathers is calling for change. As Candace Daniel explains, what started as a conversation among friends has transformed into a campaign for equity in education.
It all started here in a local park. The dads have been friends for years and have grown into a support network for each other.
What's up, fellas? How you guys doing?
Going public on YouTube, well, this is a first.
We came together today just to have a quick conversation about some of our feelings about growing up Black and having our kids grow up Black in East York. and being part of the education system.
In March, they decided to take action when the pandemic gave them new insights into what was being said in their kids' remote classes.
First, I want to preface that I'm a teacher. The teachers have my full support. That being said, I don't think that there's proper training for teachers to talk about race.
So they made this video about their experiences and what they hope to see in education, and they sent the video to their children's principals and vice principals.
Inclusive language, inclusive literature, and representation. Those were three things that we said to these principals. These are things that you can do. This is low-hanging fruit.
Funke Aladejebi specializes in the history of Canada's education system.
There are people in our school boards, there are people who are working in the Ministry of Education who are deeply invested in creating models, in creating important language that educators need to use and adapt and take into the classroom. But for some reason, there is this disconnect.
Part of the problem, she says, is there isn't a standard level of training for Canadian teachers. It differs from province to province.
There are educators in individual classrooms that are thinking critically about how to address and speak to their Black students. And then there are schools that aren't doing it well. And as a result, we don't have a uniform way of understanding whether or not we're doing it right.
At the time of our interview, only 1 of 4 schools had acknowledged receiving the video, and the fathers offered to help. Global News contacted the schools, and since then, all principals have reached out to the respective dads.
I don't know what the next step is, but I hope this can start a conversation, a deeper conversation about what are we really doing? Are we ticking boxes or are we really doing something different? And that I don't have the answer to.
Candace Daniel, Global News.
For more on Candace's conversation with the fathers and the change they hope to see, be sure to watch The New Reality tonight at 7 p.m. on Global. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is the Port Credit Lighthouse in Mississauga. We would love to see your corner of the country, so please keep sending your photos. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you back here tomorrow. Have a great night.